My name is Vance Patterson. I'm just a neighbor of yours living here in Burke County. As Christine said, I ran for U.S. Congress last year. It was the first time I'd ever run for a political office, first time I'd ever been involved in politics. And actually 2 years ago at this Tea Party was the first time I ever spoke in public. And I tell you this because I encourage each of you to step up to these booths around here and sign up. Sign up with Civitas, sign up with John Locke, sign up with the Tea Party here in Burke County or the one in Caldwell County. Because it's important as a Tea Party that we let the world know that it's not over and we're not finished.
Yay.
Now, people have been asking me what I've been doing since my run for Congress, and I tell them I've been trying to get my house back. Because that's what my wife and I did. We borrowed on our house to pay for the campaign. That's what we Americans do. When we've got a problem and we need resources, we turn to our own resources first. You do that with your families all the time. Because if you can address a problem using your resources, you're demonstrating self-reliance, which gives you self-determination. And that's something our government needs to learn, and we can teach them. I'm a small businessman. Got a company that makes industrial fans, and I'm proud to say that my employees are the best in the world, because we may be smaller now than we were when we went into the Great Recession, but we've got a stronger company. And if the economy ever turns around and starts going in the right direction, we're going to knock them dead. Now, the way we are right now, I'm pleased to say that we have gotten our house back. This pleases my wife. The products that we manufacture, industrial fans, we ship around the world, sell them across the country and around the world. This allows me to travel to different countries, and I notice a lot of things that other people don't notice. Like how other countries fly their flags. They don't. I look around here and I see flags everywhere. Other countries don't do this. My company was exhibiting at an industrial show down in Orlando, Florida, a while back, and a partner of mine with another company flew in from Italy. He and his father flew into Atlanta, rented a car and drove down. First thing he said when he walked into the show was, we could not believe all the American flags flying as we drove down here. They were on buildings, they were on houses, they were on cars, motorcycles, just lining the road. Everywhere we looked, we saw American flags. And I said, John Paul, don't you fly your flag at home in Italy? And he just laughed. He said, Vance, no other country in the world flies the flag like you Americans do. Nobody takes the pride in their country as we do here in America. And I started noticing this as I traveled to other countries. I was in China for the first time and expected to see red Chinese flags flying everywhere, just like you see on TV. Nope. I was there a week and I saw probably 5 red flags flying high up on government buildings. Nobody flies their flag like we do here in America. Picture the French flag, and I don't mean to pick on the French, but it's in the news quite a bit. The French flag, it's got large stripes, red, white, and blue. Or are they blue, white, and red? What about the Russian flag? I don't mean the old red one with the hammer and sickle, but the new Russian flag. It's also red, white, and blue with big stripes. But which way do they go? Does anybody even know what an Italian flag looks like? Everybody in the world knows what the American flag looks like because we fly it every chance we get. And I'm proud of you today for doing that. Now, traveling the world, seeing different things, often you hear talk about the global economy and how we're being passed up by other countries like China, India, Russia. Well, I'm here today to tell you that's a bunch of stuff. No place has an economy the size of ours here in America. When I'm over in Russia, I never hear anybody say, man, I can't wait to do business in India or Egypt or Spain. No, Everybody wants to do business here in America. Because if you're not doing business here, you're not a global player. Now, one of the reasons everybody wants to be here is because it's easy to do business here. As long as our government leaves it that way. We do not need more regulation. We do not need more laws. They need to enforce the laws and regulations we have now and get the bad players out of the system and keep them out. I mean in banking, in the stock market, the insurance industry, in schools, everywhere, in all businesses. Need to remove the bad players so us good workers can prosper and make this economy work. Let me give you an example of doing business overseas. Back in 1995, I set up a joint venture to manufacture our products over in Russia. We were going to send partially completed units over. They were going to final assemble them and then distribute them to Eastern and Western Europe. We signed a letter of agreement here in the United States with a company called Moven. Moven is the Moscow Ventilation Company, set up in 1937 during the Stalin era. We signed this letter of intent here in the United States. I flew over by myself to finish the deal, to meet the president of the company and set up the rest of the arrangement. Well, I got there, rested a little bit, took a tour of the factory, and I'm standing in the hallway. It's kind of dimly lit hallway of Moven. My counterpart leaves me alone. He says, I'm going to go get the driver. Well, while I'm standing there, one of the ladies that I negotiated with here in the United States, an older lady who actually worked on the Mir space program at the Capital 5 Institute in St. Petersburg. She comes walking down the hall, and she's so glad to see me. Oh, Vance, so glad to see you here in Russia. Gives me a big hug, and we're standing there. And she says, Vance, things are not as they were when we visited you in America. And I said, oh? She says, yes. Our president is no longer with us. Now remember those words. I said, oh, and I'm thinking to myself, this is why I came over, was to meet this guy. I said, what happened? She said he was killed. And I thought, oh man, should I show grief for somebody I've never met? And I said, how? And she said he was shot. And now I'm thinking, oh, please let it be a hunting accident. So I said, where? Thinking the guy may have been crawling over a fence or something, the gun slipped, and where was he shot? Well, I lost something in the interpretation because she says over there, in front of the reception desk. She said, we came in the morning, we found him laying there. And I'm thinking, oh man, here I am, my first night in Russia. The guy I came over to meet was murdered 6 weeks earlier. Nobody thought to tell me this. And here we're going out to dinner, and I'm going out with these other guys, and one of them's probably a murderer or knows who it was. So off we go for the night. The next morning, negotiations start. I'm one American in the room with 8 Russians. They had legal, they had accounting, they had marketing, they had sales, they had the new president of the company, a guy named Waxman. We're all sitting there talking. The negotiations were very difficult. Went on for 3 days. A letter of intent means nothing in Russia. 3 days we negotiated. There were times where they would say something and I didn't have a response. And I'd sit there for a minute and a half in silence, thinking about what to say. Fortunately, the Russians are very patient. At one point, I actually couldn't, they proposed something, and I was thinking to myself, this deal's blown. There is no way we're going to do this. I pushed back from the table, finally got up and walked away. It was the exact right thing to do. Everybody else got up, followed me, we talked a little bit, and finally put the agreement together. This is something that our government needs to know how to do when they're negotiating with other countries. They need to realize that in negotiations, our job is not to save the other country. It's to do what's best for our country here. Well, the agreement lasted for 6 years. During those 6 years, I learned 5 things you have to do in Russia to do business. 4 of them have nothing to do with what we do here in the United States. The last one is pay taxes. I got that one. I know how to do that. I say the agreement lasted 6 years. At the end of 6 years, I got a letter from my counterpart. In that letter, it said, Mr. Waxman is no longer with us. Remember? Sounds familiar? Sure enough, Mr. Waxman had gone missing. He was missing for 6 weeks, finally found in the trunk of his car, and he'd been there a long time. I told my wife, we're out. And we left the business. She was very pleased. I'm sure Donald Trump could tell you similar stories about negotiating and doing business around the world. This is typical. This is why everybody wants to do business here in the United States.